Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well, keeping up with all the things that are happening. A couple of things to talk through this week. The first one is it's a blog post from the Microsoft 365 developer blog, which I think might be of interest to developers, but I don't think we're the intended audience. It's the announcement about a new developer resource page for Microsoft 365 interoperability and data portability. Which is a lot of words, and it's a very short blog post here announcing this thing exists and giving us a link to the page. This is some legal thing that's come out of an agreement with the European Commission to formalise these values into legal commitments. So this is Microsoft listing out its commitments to how it makes its Microsoft 365 data sort of interoperable and able, you're able to take that data and take it out of Microsoft 365 should you want to. And they list all the different ways in which you can do that, including, unusually, I think, Exchange Online APIs, but I think they're actually talking about Graph APIs at that point, even though they call them, APIs to interop with Exchange Online. This is a super high level blog post. Okay, this will not go into the nitpicky details that I know you're all shouting about right now. Yes, on paper there are, Graph APIs for Exchange Online. Do they let you do everything you want to do to extract all of the data ever? No, they probably don't. But this is a kind of a high level listing, if you like, of all the interop that you can do with Microsoft 365. So I think it's useful. I think, like I say, I don't think hardcore developers are really the intended audience for this, but that doesn't mean it isn't useful to you. If you just want an overview, if your organization wants to understand, what the options are, this is a good landing place that saves you doing a bunch of research if that's what you were looking to do. So that might be of use to you. Kind of go through and just make sure, I suppose, as well, as a developer, as a Microsoft 365 developer, you understand all of those extensibility points, because there might be value to you in sort of understanding what's there, and you might have missed something as well. So that's worth looking at for sure. Okay, other things. Let's have a look. We've got a couple of other things to talk through. This one is interesting. So, and it's another rename. So I get, these are kind of slightly frustrating, these renames. This one is a rename of the Teams AI library. If you remember, the Teams AI library is not that old. It was a way to quickly scaffold up a Microsoft Teams bot that had good AI hooks into like a standard model, standard way of doing things. You could just put in a prompt and go pretty much straight away. That's now been renamed to the Teams SDK. So was formerly the Teams AI library, and is now called the Teams SDK, and is marketed as a suite of packages used to develop on Microsoft Teams. I mean, fine, I guess. I think this is a little bit confusing to people, because really its scope is around building bots in Teams, and it kind of hand waves over the fact that there are other ways to do extensibility in Teams. I'm thinking things like tabs and, compose extensions and all the other things you can do, and extending meetings and all the rest of it. I don't think you can do that here. I think this is just making that agent experience. If you somewhere in here, they go through like what you can do, these core concepts. It doesn't say really. I think maybe in here we go, as an SDK. It gives you an example of why you'd use an SDK. But again, this is all about agent behavior. So that's why I think this is just for agents. And also that's also what the Teams AI library was. It was just for, building agents. I think it's fine. I think the constant renaming is confusing to people. I would love to see clarity on this at Ignite, which is coming really soon, November 17th to 21st. So yeah, hopefully we'll get some of that. But in the meantime, just be aware that the thing that used to be called the Teams AI library, still a solid option, honestly, if you're looking to quickly build an agent or a bot that will be consumed in Microsoft Teams predominantly, I would say, but maybe also Microsoft 365. That is definitely an option for you. But yeah, it's now called the Teams SDK. So there's that. Okay, talked about that long enough. So there's another blog post out from the Visual Studio folks about their inclusion of AI into Visual Studio. So this is like big Visual Studio. And they've laid out a roadmap, which I think, again, we talked about roadmaps last week for SPFX. And this is the Visual Studio team laying their roadmap out, which I think is really good. Again, really useful to get that clarity, that insight, I suppose, and that confidence going into sort of next year. But what they're doing actually is just talking about the stuff they're planning on doing this month and the stuff that's coming kind of in the next couple of weeks. And it's quite a lot. They are pushing forward. They've got some new things coming out. They've got new agents going into various parts of the ALM process, so test agents, debugger agents, supporting multiple agents at once. They've got some feedback changes to the agent mode and chat mode. MCP stuff. What's this? Okay, some governance and performance improvements and stuff, and then some latest models stuff. So there's plenty going on in the Visual Studio world. I'd say don't completely forget about big Visual Studio. I know lots of people are using Visual Studio Code now, but I think Visual Studio definitely still has its place. I'm honestly, personally, really pleased that Microsoft is continuing investment both on Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code, because I do think they are doing and offering different things to different folks. And I think that's really useful and valuable. So that's all good. And then the last thing I think to tell you about is, again, not super aligned with core techie development stuff, but absolutely something developers need to know in this world. And that's around data sovereignty and Microsoft 365 and data ownership and all the rest of it. And it's the blog post announcement is that Microsoft offers in-country data processing to 15 countries to strengthen sovereign controls for Microsoft 365 Copilot, which sounds good. I read this and I thought Microsoft kind of had this already, but maybe it didn't, and now it does. So this is Microsoft saying they're making in-country data processing for Microsoft 365 interactions available in 15 countries around the world, including Australia, the United Kingdom, India, and Japan. And then in 2026, they'll expand it out to a bunch more countries, including the US. I thought this was interesting. I maybe misunderstood, and I'm not the best placed to kind of speak knowledgeably about this kind of data residency thing. Especially, I find it hard, honestly, to reconcile in my head, where Microsoft says, your data never leaves your tenant, okay, but then also says for data processing, we may process your data elsewhere. I guess that there's the sort of technicals there. They don't actually literally mean it will not leave your tenant. They just mean they won't do anything else with it. It may actually leave your tenant and be processed in another country. I think that's a nuance lots of IT CIOs maybe don't fully appreciate and understand. That's interesting. A blog post like this is useful because this is, I think, what everybody thinks they're getting. It might maybe jolt people a bit to realize that that's not what they're getting today, but I think that's interesting. But anyway, there's a whole thing about timelines here as well, about which countries are coming when and what they're planning on doing in the future, but definitely worth a read. Maybe I've completely got the wrong end of the stick as well about this whole governance, sovereignty, data thing. That is quite possible. So I thought it was all kind of worth a read, worth you knowing about for sure, because we get caught in the middle of this stuff and we are expected to know all the answers and we often don't. So blog posts like this I think are useful to have. You're sort of knowing that they exist and you can point at them and say, hey, go read this. This will give you the answers. Okay, like I say, looking forward to Ignite, which starts next week. So I think maybe depends on the timings of everything. Next week might be either really empty or we might have started to see the first Ignite announcements come out. Either way, going to be an exciting one in the lead up. So get everything else in order and then you can, take next week off and watch Ignite maybe or not. Have a great week, whatever it is you do. And speak to you next time.